Who could it be? Why, it's Rina Claus! Happy holidays and Merry Christmas, everyone! And for those who don't celebrate, I hope you have a wonderful day. Oh, hail Rina Claus, as you should. Worship me. Worship Rina Claus. Yeah, I won the title. I do apologize if you hear. I put on a nice little since we have the fire going, I turned on a little bit of some fireplace sounds to help, But if you hear a firework, that's not me. I promise, I swear it's not me. How's my Christmas been? Well, yesterday I was not feeling the best. It's the day when we do celebrate Christmas, so yeah, I do apologize for canceling stream. It was a too many cooks situation. I was cooking, I was rapping. All the family was here, very loud. I'm feeling a bit better today. And don't worry, we have a karaoke right after this. But today was really good. It was a good holiday. It was very peaceful, very quiet. I went to go see Sonic the Hedgehog 3, so I'll talk more about that later. I'll just say I'll be seeing it again and again and again and again and again and again and again. It was so good. It was so good, my goodness. Keanu was perfect. It was perfect. I need to see it again now. I will say 110 out of 10 on Shadow. He portrayed him so well. Great movie. Gets a full high score on Letterboxd. Yeah, don't worry. I'm not going to be speaking about the spoilers or anything because, yeah. I know people haven't seen it yet, of course, and I wouldn't want the movie spoiled for me. I would just say that Keanu did a really good job as Shadow. Everyone was great. Story was chef kiss. Oh, you're seeing with friends in a few days. Nice, nice. Oh, you're gonna see tomorrow. Nice. But Merry Christmas. Well, technically, if we're going by Yule, we have, I believe Yule is till the 5th, so we're still being festive over here. You can still be festive, even though Christmas is over. We still have Yule is still going on. I am a shadow owl. Even though I do like silver, and I know I kind of look like silver. I do like silver though, but I am a shadow owl. My color scheme also kind of matches shadow with the red and the gold and the white and the black. Yeah, Christmas can go all year round if you wanted to. Now first, let me give you guys, since you're here, little head pats. Yes. Before we get into story time. Yes. But we're gonna be reading just a few Christmas stories today. I thought about doing a Christmas carol, but I don't think my brain can handle that right now. So we're gonna stick with some shorter stories today. And of course we have karaoke after this, so... So we're in 06. We don't talk about the 06 game. We don't talk about that here. Shh. Shh. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. The only thing we talk about that game is Silver, Blaze. That one, I can't remember his name. Looks like Shadow, but isn't Shadow. Because his design is cool. The soundtrack. And the fan dub. That's it. Yeah, him. I don't know if it had more time, if it could have been better. It was so buggy. and plot-wise, I wasn't really into the story. I could see where they were going, but they could have done it better. I did have a wonderful Christmas today. Thank you. It's been really nice and peaceful and Sonic the Hedgehog filled. But as mentioned, oh yes, and karaoke won't be ASMR. We'll be in dreamland, so even though I'm lulling you to sleep now, making sure you're extra cozy, I'm gonna hype you back up. Yeah, very true. Blaze was in Sonic Rush. I never played Sonic Rush, so my introduction to her was in 06. I did not, but I also did not request. I requested not to have anything this year. I was the gift giver this year. Made sure all the owl nieces and nephews got their gifts. I did get a gift card, so that was nice. They knew me and my coffee. But even that, I'm very thankful I got a gift card. That way I can get my coffee. Yes. Rina Claus. Let's go, Rina Claus. Alright, shall we get started with story time? Yeah? Let me move a little bit closer to the mic. Sorry, I'm a bit far away. I was getting cozy in my chair and my Santa throne that I took from him, but I need to get a bit closer to the mic. So is this better? Do I need to turn the volume up or anything? Just let me know how it sounds. I know we're having like a bit of a Zatsu ASMR. Some calm time, yes. Ooh, D&D, nice. Audio's good. Okay. I'm still gonna scoot a little bit closer. Sounds good to you? Nice. Alright, so I did have one on the list, but I still don't know the rules with reading some creepypasta, so I did not include any creepypasta for this one. I guess, like, sometimes I do tracking, sometimes I don't. It's because I'm leaning a bit closer into the, to the mic, and I'm looking all over the place. So, I think it's easier just to have, Rina Claus on stream staring at you guys. I can talk without moving my mouth, because this is the power of a dream entity. Yeah. And of course, we do have some stuff here. As mentioned, I have my ASMR. Oh my god, something just fell. Okay. I have my handy dandy chapstick. Also, how does the fireplace sound? Is it too loud or And now lip oil. It's nice. It's very soft. I can turn it up a little bit. I just don't want to overpower, so I'll turn it up just a little bit more. There we go. Of course, I have my water. But don't worry, I brought the glass bottle. If you want to guess which alcoholic beverage is in there, be my guest. And for fun, I did bring out the freeze-dried candy again. Because it's a holiday, and, you know, one thing Rina Claus likes are sweets. Eggnog, milk? No, milk. I actually brought out soju. Might come in handy for, yeah, Sal gets it. Might be fun for karaoke tonight. I have, it is peach. It's peach flavor. Alright. I'm gonna go ahead and hop into the first story, which is a classic, of course. 'Twas the night before Christmas. Are you guys ready? Are you all snuggled up in your beds? Cozy in your blankets? Get cozy. Make sure to get cozy. Grab a plushie and hold it close. Get all snuggled up. Alright. 'Twas the night before Christmas by Clement Seymour. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas would soon be there. The children were all nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads, and Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there rose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters, and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave a lustrous of the midday to object below, when what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. Here they come. With a little old driver, so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be Saint Nick. Hoo, hoo, hoo. Hoo, hoo, hoo. More rapid than eagles, his coursiers they came, and he whispered and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer, and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner, and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky. So up to the housetop of the coursers they flew, with the sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then, in a twinkling, I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. Down the chimney, St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur, from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkle, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn like a bow, and the beard of his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. Ho, ho, ho. Ho, ho, ho. Ho, ho, ho. Ho, ho, ho. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him, in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, and went straight to his work, and filled all stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose, and gave a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they flew, like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, "Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night." And that was our first story. That one's just a classic, isn't it? I do have a couple other classics here, so I have one I never heard of before, but alright. Let me have a little sip, and we will start our next story, which will be The Gift of the Magi. That was fantastic, thank you. Isn't it nice just sitting here by the fire, and got my cozy little mug here, and we're reading Christmas stories? Such goodness and jelliness. Story time is always fun. I'm glad. We got a couple more stories too. We're gonna be reading about 4 more. Okay, and now let me just... This isn't the fireworks or the fire crackling. This is me. I'm sorry, my knuckles. crunchy bone ASMR. Let's go. There we go. That's good. That's good. My crunchy bones. That's good. Alright. Those are some good ones, yeah. I can feel like my neck. I need to pop my neck. Glow stick owl. I am a UO after all. That was a good pop. Thank you, thank you. Alright. Put on some spoil. Alright, the next story, The Gift of the Magi. $1.87. That was all. She had put it aside, 1 cent and then another and then another. In her careful buying of meat and other food, Della counted it 3 times. $1.87. And the next day would be Christmas. There was nothing to do but fall on the bed and cry. So Della did. While the lady of the home is slowly growing quieter, we can look at the home. Furnished rooms cost at $8 a week. Holy shit. Can I have this, please? There is little more to say about it. No, $8 a week for furnished rooms. Like, what the? What a time. In the hall below was a letterbox too small to hold a letter. There was an electric bell, but it could not make a sound. And there was a name beside the door. Mr. James Dillingham Young. That is a great dream. What a dream indeed. When the name was placed there, Mr. James Dillingham Young was being paid $30 a week. Now, he was being paid only $20 a week. The name seemed too long and too important. It should perhaps have been Mr. James D. Young. But when Mr. James Dillingham Young entered the furnished rooms, his name became very shortened indeed. Mrs. James Dillingham Young put her arms warmly about him and called him Jim. You have already met her. She is Della. Della finished her crying and cleaned the marks of it from her face. She stood by the window and looked out with no interest. Tomorrow would be Christmas Day, and she only had $1.87 with which to buy Jim a gift. Welcome, welcome. We're just reading some festive stories tonight. She had put aside as much as she could for months. With this result, $20 a week is not much. Everything had cost more than she had expected. It always happened like that. Only $1.87 to buy a gift for Jim. Her Jim. She had many happy hours planning something nice for him. Something nearly good enough. Something almost worth the honor of belonging to him. There was a looking glass between the windows of the room. Perhaps you have seen the kind of looking glass that is placed in $8 furnished rooms. It was very narrow. A person could only see a little of himself at a time. However, if he was very thin and moved very quickly, he might be able to get a good view of himself. Della, being quite thin, had mastered this art. Suddenly, she turned from the window and stood before the glass. Her eyes were shining brightly, but her face had lost its color. Quickly, she pulled down her hair and let it fall to its complete length. The James Dillingham Youngs were very proud of two things which they owned. One thing was Jim's gold watch, which had belonged to his father, and long ago it had belonged to his father's father. And the other thing was Della's hair. If a queen had lived in the rooms near theirs, Della would have washed and dried her hair where the queen could see it. Della knew her hair was more beautiful than the queen's jewels and gifts. If a king had lived in the same house with all of his riches, Jim would have looked at his watch every time they met. Jim knew that no king had anything so valuable. So now, Della's beautiful hair fell about her, shining like a falling stream of brown water. It reached below her knee. It almost made itself into a dress for her. Then she put it up on her head again, nervously and quickly. Once she stopped for a moment and stood still, while a tear or two ran down her face. She put on her old brown coat and put on her old brown hat. With the bright light still in her eyes, she quickly moved out the door and down the street. Jim is the name of all time. Where she stopped, the sign said, Mrs. Sofroni, hair articles of all kind. Up to the second floor, Della ran and stopped to get her breath. Mrs. Sofroni, Mrs. Sofroni, large, too white, cold-eyed, looked at her. Will you buy my hair? Asked Della. I buy hair, said Mrs. Sofroni. Take your hat off and let me look at it. Down fell the brown waterfall. $20, said Mrs. Sofroni, lifting the hat to feel its weight. Give it to me quick, said Della. Oh, and the next 2 hours seemed to fly. She was going from one shop to another to find a gift for Jim. She found it at last. It surely had been made for Jim and no one else. There was no other like it in any of the other shops. She had looked in every shop in the city. It was pure gold. It was a pure gold watch chain, very simply made. Its value was in its rich and pure material. Because it was so plain and simple, you knew that it had to be valuable. All good things are like that. It was good enough for the watch. As soon as she saw it, she knew that Jim must have it. It was just like him. Quietness and value. Jim and the chain both had quietness and value. She paid $21 for it, and she hurried home with the chain and 87 cents. With that chain on his watch, Jim could look at his watch and learn the time wherever he might be. Though the watch was so fine, it never had a fine chain. He sometimes took it out and looked at it, only when no one could see him do it. When Della arrived home, her mind quieted a little. She began to think more reasonably. She started to try to cover the sad marks of what she had done. Love and large-heartedly giving, when added together, can leave deep marks. It's never easy to cover these marks, dear friends. Never easy. Within 40 minutes, her head looked a little better. With her short hair, she looked wonderfully like a schoolboy. She stood at the looking glass for a long time. "If Jim doesn't kill me," she said, "before he looks at me a second time, he'll say I look like a girl who sings and dances for money." But what could I do? Oh, what could I do with $1.80? At 7, Jim's dinner was ready for him. Jim was never late. Della held the watch chain in her hand and sat near the door where he always entered. Then she heard him step in the hall, and her face lost color for a moment. She often said little prayers quietly about simple everyday things, and now she said, "Please God, make him think I'm still pretty." The door opened, and Jim stepped in. He looked very thin, and he was not smiling. Poor fellow, he was only 22, and with a family to take care of. He needed a new coat, and he had nothing to cover his cold hands. Jim stopped inside. He was as quiet as a hunting dog when it was near a bird. His eyes looked strangely at Della, and there was an expression in them that she could not understand. It filled her with fear. It was not anger, nor surprise, nor anything she had been ready for. He simply looked at her with that strange expression on his face. Della went to him. "Jim, dear," she cried, "don't look at me like that. I had to cut my hair off and sold it. I couldn't live through Christmas without giving you my gift. My hair will grow again. You wouldn't care, will you? My hair will grow very fast. It's Christmas, Jim. Let's be happy. You don't know what a beautiful gift I got for you." "You cut off your hair?" asked Jim slowly. He seemed too labored to understand what had happened. He seemed to not feel so sure he knew. "Cut it off and sold it," said Della. "Don't you like me now? I'm me, Jim. I'm in the same without my hair." Jim looked around. "You say your hair is gone?" "You don't have to look for it," said Della. "It's sold, I tell you. Sold and gone too. It's the night before Christmas, boy. Be good to me, because I sold it for you. Maybe the hairs of my head could be counted," she said, "but no one could ever count my love for you. Shall we eat dinner, Jim?" Jim then put his arms round Della. For 10 seconds, let us look in a different direction. $8 a week, or $1 million a year. How different are they? Some might give you answers. But it will be wrong. The Magi brought valuable gifts, but that was not among them. My meaning will be explained soon. From inside the coat, Jim took something tied in paper. He threw it upon the table. "I want you to understand me, Dell," he said. "Nothing like a haircut could make me love you any less. But if you'll just open that, you may know what I felt when I came in." White fingers pulled off the paper, and then a cry of joy, and then a change to tears. For there lay the combs that Della had seen in a shop window and loved for a long time. Beautiful combs with jewels, perfect for her beautiful hair. She had known they cost too much for her to buy them. She had looked at them without the least hope of owning them, and now they were hers, but her hair was gone. "Hi, Nana. Hi, Nana. I love you, Nana." But she held them to her heart, and at last was able to look up and said, "My hair will go fast, Jim." And then she jumped up and cried, "Oh, oh." Jim had not seen his beautiful gift. She held it out to him in her open hand. The gold seemed to shine softly, as if with her own warm and loving spirit. "Isn't it perfect, Jim? I hunted all over town to find it. You'll have to look at your watch 100 times a day now. Give me your watch. I want to see how they look together." Jim sat down and smiled. "Della," said he, "let's put our Christmas gifts away and keep them a while. They're too nice to use now. I sold the watch to get the money to buy the combs, and now I think we should have dinner." The Magi, as you know, were wise men, wonderfully wise men, who brought gifts to the newborn Christ child. They were the first to give Christmas presents. Being wise, their gifts were doubtless wise ones. And here I have told you the story of 2 children who were not wise. Each sold the most valuable thing that they owned in order to buy a gift for each other. But let me speak a last word to the wise of these days. Of all who give gifts, these 2 were the most wise. Of all who gave and received gifts, such as they are the most wise. Everywhere they are the wise ones. They are the Magi. The end. That was the gift of the Magi. I love you, Nana. I hope you have a good Christmas. Nana, 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 Nana. It's a very beautiful story. Very selfless acts, yeah. Alright. Me. Hydration break. Ooh. It's from North Carolina. Ooh. That's neat. I remember the adaptation with Mickey and Minnie. I remember a couple other adaptations. This is what the power. This is what the dream owl's powers feel like. Rina, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much do you ignore Nana? From 1 to 10? 100. Yes, with the harmonica, I remember. Yeah, the harmonica. Is it the harmonica? I don't remember, it's been a long time, but it sounds familiar with the harmonica. Alright. I'm gonna hydrate a bit more, and then we will go to a story that I have not read before called The Kidnapped Santa Claus. And I promise, this wasn't me. I didn't do this. Okay, and grab some chopstick. Well, you didn't kidnap him, you shot. Yeah. That's how you become Santa Claus. Gotta take him out. So I can say for certain, this wasn't me. I didn't do that. You can kidnap us too. Or are we helping kidnap Santa Claus? No, I took him out. Yeah. 22 bullets. You could be an example, so be careful. But yeah, I did not kidnap Santa Claus. Give me one moment. Sorry, I had to sneeze. Is that what the shots sound like? Yeah, they were just little. Alright, on to our next story. I think, yeah, we should be getting to a good time for karaoke by the time we finish the last two stories. Rina Popcat. I really should get like a little pop owl. Alright. The story is by L. Frank Baum. A Kidnapped Santa Claus. Okay, give me 1 second. I gotta readjust my mic. There we go. Santa lives in the Laughing Valley, where stands the big rumbling castle in which his toys are manufactured. His workmen, selected by the Rouse, Nooks, Pixies, and Fairies, live with him, and everyone is as busy as can be from one year's end to another. It is called the Laughing Valley because everything there is happy. The brook chuckles to itself as it leaps, rollicking between its green banks. The winds whistle merrily in the trees. The sunbeams dance lightly over the soft grass. And the violets and wildflowers look smilingly up at their green nests To laugh, one needs to be happy. To be happy, one needs to be content. And throughout the laughing valley of Santa Claus, contentment reigns supreme. I am an owl after all, I can make those noises. I am a bird. On one side is the mighty forest of Burzy. At the other side stands a huge mountain that contains caves of daemons. And between them is a valley lies smiling and peaceful. One would think that our good old Santa, who devotes his days to making children happy, would have no enemies on all of the earth. And as a matter of fact, for a long period of time he encountered nothing but love wherever he might go. But the daemons who live in the mountain caves grew to hate Santa Claus very much. And all for a simple reason that he made children happy. The caves of the daemons are 5 in number. A broad pathway leads to the first cave, which is finely arched cavern at the foot of the mountain, the entrance being beautifully carved and decorated. It resides the daemon of selfishness. Back of this is another cave, inhabited by the daemon of envy. The cave of the daemon of hatred is next in order, and through this one passes to the home of the demon of malice. Situated in the dark and fearful cave in the very heart of the mountain. I do not know what lies beyond this point. Some say there are terrible pitfalls that lead to death and destruction. And this very well may be true. However, from one of the 4 caves mentioned, there is a small, narrow tunnel leading to the 5th cave, a cozy little room occupied by the demon of repentance. As the rocky floors of these passages are well worn by the track of passing feet, I judge that many wanderers in the cave of the daemons have escaped through the tunnels to the abode of the daemon of repentance, who is said to be a pleasant sort of fellow, who gladly opens for one a little door admitting you into the fresh air and sunshine again. Well, these demons of the caves, thinking they had great cause to dislike old Santa Claus, had a meeting one day to discuss the matter. "I'm really lonesome," said the demon of selfishness. "For Santa Claus distributes so many pretty gifts to all the children that they become happy and generous through his example and keep away from my cave." "I have the same trouble," rejoined the demon of envy. "The little ones seem quite content with Santa Claus, and there were few indeed that I can... Oh gosh, I let my space hold up. They can coax to become envious. And that makes it bad for me," declared the demon of hatred. "For if no children passes the cave of selfishness and envy, none will get to my cavern. Or mine," added the demon of malice. "For my part," said the demon of repentance, "it's easily seen that if children do not visit your cave, they have no need to visit mine, so that I am quite as neglected as you are." "And all because this person they call Santa Claus," exclaimed the demon of envy. He is simply ruining our business, and something must be done at once. To this, they readily agreed. But what to do was another and more difficult matter to settle. They knew that Santa Claus worked all through the year at his castle in the Laughing Valley, preparing the gifts he was to distribute on Christmas Eve. And at first, they resolved to try and tempt him into their caves, that he might lead him on a terrible pitfalls that ended in destruction. So the very next day, while Santa Claus was busily at work, surrounded by his little band of assistants, the demon of selfishness came to him and said, "These toys are wonderfully bright and pretty. Why do you not keep them for yourself? It's a pity to give them to those noisy boys and fretful girls who break and destroy them so quickly." "Nonsense," cried the old grayed beard, his eyes twinkling merrily as he turned toward the tempting demon. "The boys and the girls are never so nosy and fretful after receiving my gifts. And if I can make them happy for one day in a year, I am quite content." So the demon went back to the others, who awaited him in their cave, and said, "I have failed, for Santa is not at all selfish." The following day, the demon of envy visited Santa Claus. He said, "The toys are full of playthings quite as pretty as those you are making. What a shame it is that they should interfere with your business. They make toys by machinery much quicker than you can make them by hand, and they sell them for money, while you get nothing at all for your work." But Santa refused to be envious of the toy shops. "I can supply the little ones but once a year, on Christmas Eve," he answered. For the children there are many, and I am but one, and as my work is one of love and kindness, I should be ashamed to receive money from my little gifts. But throughout all the year the children must be amused in some way, so the toy shops are able to bring much happiness to my little friends. I like the toy shops, and am glad to see them prosper." In spite of the second rebuff, the demon of hatred thought he would try to influence Santa Claus. So, the next day he entered the busy workshop and said, "Good morning, Santa. I have bad news for you." "Then run away like a good fellow," answered Santa Claus. "Bad news is something that should be kept secret and never told." "You cannot escape this, however," declared the demon. "For in the world are many good who do not believe in Santa Claus, and these are you bound to hate bitterly, since they have wronged you so." "Stuff and rubbish," cried Santa. "And there will be others who resent your making children happy, and who sneer at you and call you foolish, a foolish old rattlepat. You are quite right to hate such base slanders, and you ought to be revenged upon them for their evil words." "But I don't hate them," exclaimed Santa Claus positively. "Such people do me no real harm, but merely rendered themselves and their children unhappy. Poor things. I'd much rather help them any day than injure them. Indeed, the demons could not tempt old Santa Claus in any way. On the contrary, he was shrewd enough to see that their object in visiting him was to make mischief and trouble. And his cheery laughter disconcerted the evil ones and showed them the folly of such undertaking, so they abandoned honeyed words and determined to use force. It was well known that no harm come to Santa Claus while he is in Laughing Valley, for the fairies, the Ryles, and the Knooks all protected him. But on Christmas Eve, he drives his reindeer out into the big world, carrying a sleigh load of toys and pretty gifts to the children. And this time, and the occasion when his enemies had the best chance to injure him, so the demons laid their plans and awaited the arrival of Christmas Eve. The moon shone big and white in the sky. The snow laid crisp and sparkling on the ground as Santa cracked his whip and sped away out of the valley with the great world beyond. The roomy sleigh was packed full with huge sacks of toys, and the reindeer dashed onward, with jolly old Santa laughed and whistled and sang for very joy. For in all his merry life, this was the one day of year where he was the happiest, the day he lovingly bestowed the treasures of his workshop upon the little children. It would be a busy night for him, he knew well. As he whistled and shouted and cracked his whip again, he reviewed in minds all the towns and cities and farmhouses where he was expected, and figured that he had just enough presents to go around and make every child happy. The reindeer knew exactly where to expect them, and dashed along so swiftly that their feet scarcely seemed to touch the snow-covered ground. Suddenly, a strange thing happened. A rope shot through the moonlight, and a big noose that was at the end of it settled over the arms and body of Santa Claus and drew tight. Before he could resist or even cry out, he was jerked from the seat of the sleigh and tumbled head foremost into the snowbank, while the reindeer rushed onward with the load of toys and carried it quickly out of sight and sound. Such a surprising experience confused old Santa for a moment, and when he had collected his senses, he found that the wicked demons had pulled him from the snowdrifts and bound him tightly with so many coils of stout rope. And then they carried the kidnapped Santa Claus away to their mountain, where they thrust the prisoner into a secret cave and chained him to a rocky wall so he could not escape. Laughed the demons, rubbing their hands together with cruel glee. What will the children do now? How they will cry and scold and storm when they find there are no toys in their stockings and no gifts in their Christmas trees. And what a lot of punishment they will receive from their parents. And how they will flock to our caves of selfishness and envy and hatred and malice. We have done a mighty clever thing, we demons of the caves. Now, it is so chanced that on this Christmas Eve, the good Santa had taken with him his sleigh the Ryle. Oh, taken with him in his sleigh. The Ryle, Peter the Nook, Kilter the Pixie, and a small fairy named Whisk. His 4 favorite assistants. These little people he had often found very useful in helping him to distribute his gifts to the children. And when he was so suddenly dragged from his sleigh, they were all snugly tucked underneath the seat, where the sharp wind could not reach them. The tiny immortals knew nothing of the capture of Santa Claus until some time after he had disappeared. But finally, they missed his cheery voice. And as their master always sang and whistled on his journeys, the silence warned them that something was wrong. Little Whisk stuck out his head from underneath the seat and found Santa gone, and no one to direct the flight of the reindeer. "Whoa," he called out. The deer obediently slackened their speed and came to a halt. Peter and Neuter and Kilter all jumped upon the seat and looked over the track made by the sleigh. But Santa Claus had been left miles and miles behind. "What shall we do?" asked Whisk anxiously. All the mirth and mischief banished from his wee face by this great calamity. "We must go back and find him," said Neuter the Ryle, who thought and spoke with much deliberation. "No, no," exclaimed Peter the Nook, who, cross and crabbed though he was, might always be depended upon in an emergency. "If we delay or go back, there will not be time to get toys to the children before morning, and that would grieve Santa more than anything else. It is certain that some wicked creatures have captured him," added Kilter thoughtfully, "and their object must be to make the children unhappy. So, our first duty is to get the toys distributed so carefully as if Santa Claus were himself present. Afterward, we can search for him and easily secure his freedom." This seemed such good and sensible advice that the others at once resolved to adopt it. So Peter the Nook called to the reindeer, and the faithful animals again sprang forward and dashed over the hill and valley, through the forest and plain, until they came to a house wherein children lied, sleeping and dreaming of pretty gifts they would find on Christmas morning. Oh, we had raiders. Ooh, welcome in, raiders. Hello, hello. Sorry, I'm reading a story. Hello, welcome in. Hi, hi. I hope you all had a wonderful time. Yes, we are reading a story. It kidnapped Santa Claus. So I hope you enjoy some cozy reading. And Galmi, I hope your stream was super good. I hope your stream was great. They freaking took him, man, they did. So yes, we're just reading some cozy Christmas stories. And I hope you enjoy them. We have 2 more stories after this, and then we're going to be doing another stream of it's gonna be a short little karaoke stream. Festive. So, settle in. And I hope you enjoy the stories. Alright, where was I? Give me 1 second. Okay, I found my spot. The little immortals had set themselves a difficult task, for although they had assisted Santa Claus on many of his journeys, he had always directed and guided them and told them exactly what he wished them to do. But now they had to distribute the toys according to their own judgment, and they did not understand children as well as did the old Santa. So it was no wonder they made some laughable errors. Amy Brown, who wanted a doll, got a drum instead, and a drum is no use for a girl who loves dolls. And Charlie Smith, who delights to romp and play out of doors, who wanted some new rubber boots to keep his feet dry, and has received a sewing box filled with colorful worsteds and threads and needles, which made him so provoked that he thoughtlessly called our dear Santa a fraud. Had there been many such mistakes, the demons would have accomplished their evil purpose that made children unhappy. But the little friends of the absent Santa labored faithfully and intelligently to carry out their master's ideas. And they made a few errors that might be expected under such unusual circumstances. And although they worked as swiftly as possible, day had begun to break before all the toys and other presents were distributed. So for the first time in many years, the reindeers trotted into the Laughing Valley. On their return in broad daylight, with the brilliant sun peeping over the edge of the forest, just to prove they were far behind to their accustomed hours. Having put the deer in the stable, the little folk began to wonder how they might rescue dear Santa, and they realized they must discover first of all what happened to him and where he was. So Whisk the fairy transported himself into the bower of the Fairy Queen. To the bower of the Fairy Queen, which was located deep in the heart of the forest of the Burzee. And once there, it did not take him long to find out about all the naughty demons and how they kidnapped the good Santa Claus to prevent him from making children happy. The Fairy Queen also promised her assistance, and then, fortified by this powerful support, Whisk flew back to where Neuter and Peter and Kilter awaited him, and the four counseled together and laid plans to rescue Santa from his enemies. It is possible that Santa was not as merry as usual during the night that succeeded his capture, for although he had faith and judgment of his little friends, he could not avoid certain amount of worry, and an anxious look creeped over at times into his kind old eyes as he thought of the disappointment that might await his dear little children. And the demons, who guarded him by turns, one after another, did not neglect to taunt him with words in his helpless condition. When Christmas Day dawned upon the demon of malice was guarding the prisoner, and his tongue was sharper than that of any others. "The children are waking up, Santa," he cried. They are waking up to find their stockings empty. How they will quarrel and wail and stomp their feet in anger. Our caves will be full today, old Santa. Our caves are sure to be full. But to this, as to others like taunts, Santa Claus answered nothing. He was much grieved by his capture, it is true, but its courage did not forsake him. And finding the prisoner would not rely to his jeers, the demon of malice presently went away and sent the demon of repentance to take his place. The last personage was not as disagreeable as the others. He had gentle and refined features, and his voice was soft and pleasant in tone. "My brother demons do not trust me overmuch," he said, as he entered the cavern, "but it is morning now, and the mischief is done. You cannot visit the children again for another year." "This is true," answered Santa, almost cheerfully. "Christmas Eve has passed, and for the first time in centuries, I have not visited my children." "The little ones will be greatly disappointed," murmured the demon of repentance, almost regretfully. "But that cannot be helped now. The grief is likely to make the children selfish and envious and hateful. And if they come to the caves of the demons today, I shall get a chance to lead some of them to my cave of repentance." "Do you never repent yourself?" asked Santa Claus curiously. "Oh yes, indeed," answered the demon. "I am even now repenting that I am assisting in your capture. Of course it is too late to remedy the evil that has been done, but repentance, you know, can come only after an evil thought or deed. For in the beginning there is nothing to repent of." "So I understand," said Santa Claus. "Those who avoid evil deed never visit your cave." "As a rule, that is true," replied the demon. "Yet you, who have done no evil, were about to visit my cave at once. For to prove that I sincerely regret my share in your capture, and I am going to permit your escape." The speech greatly surprised the prisoner, until he reflected that it was just what might be expected of the demon of repentance. The fellow at once busied himself untying the knots that bound Santa Claus and unlocking the chains that fastened him to the wall. Then he led the way through the long tunnel until they both emerged in the cave of repentance. "I hope you will forgive me," said the demon pleadingly. "I'm not really a bad person, you know, and I believe accomplishment a great deal of good in the world." With this, he opened the back door and let in a flood of sunshine, and Santa sniffed the fresh air gratefully. "I bear no malice," he said to the demon in a gentle voice, "and I'm sure the world would be a dreary place without you. So good morning, and a Merry Christmas to you." With these words, he stepped out to greet the morning, and a moment later he was trudging along, whistling softly to himself on his way home to the laughing village. Marching over the snow forward the mountain with a vast army made up of the most curious creatures imaginable. There were numberless newts in the forest, as rough and crooked in appearance, and as gnarled branches of the trees they ministered to And there were the dainty riles of the field, each one bearing the emblem of a flower or a plant it guarded. Behind those were the ranks of pixies, gnomes, and nymphs, and in the rear 1,000 beautiful fairies floated along in a gorgeous array. This wonderful army was led by Whisk, Peter, Neuter, and Kilter, who had assembled to rescue Santa Claus from captivity and to punish the demons who dared take him away from his beloved children. And although they looked so bright and peaceful, the little immortals were armed with powers that would be very terrifying to those who incurred their anger. Woe to the demons of the caves and this mighty army of vengeance ever meet them. But lo, coming to meet his loyal friends appeared the imposing form of Santa Claus, his white beard floating in the breeze, and his bright eyes sparkling with pleasure at this proof of love that he had inspired in the hearts of the most powerful creatures in existence. And while they cluttered around him and danced with glee at his safe return, they gave him earnest thanks for their support. But Whisk and Neuter and Peter and Kilter, they embraced him affectionately. "It is useless to pursue the demons," said Santa to the army. "They have their place in the world and can never be destroyed." "But that is a great pity, nonetheless," he continued musing. "To the fairies and nooks and pixies and riles all escorted the good man to his palace, and there left him to talk over the events of the night with his little assistants. Whisk had already rendered himself invisible and flown through the big world to see how the children were getting along with this bright Christmas morning, and by the time he returned, Peter had finished telling Santa Claus how they had distributed the toys. We really did very well," cried the fairy in a pleased voice, "for I had found little unhappiness among the children this morning. Still, you must not get captured again, my dear Santa, for you might not be so fortunate another time in carrying out your ideas." He then related the mistakes that had been made, which he had not discovered until his tour of inspection, and Santa Claus at once sent him with rubber boots for Charlie Smith and a doll for Amy Brown. And so even those two, disappointed, became happy. As for the wicked demons in the cave, they were filled with anger when they found that their clever capture of Santa Claus had come to naught. Indeed, no one on that Christmas day appeared to be at all selfish or envious or hateful, and realizing that while the children's saint had many powerful friends in its folly to oppose him, the demons never again attempted to interfere with his journeys on Christmas Eve. The end. I mean, he's repenting for it. He did not apologize, but he is repenting. He did set him free. They learned a lesson, yes. They learned a lesson. Okay, so we have 2 more stories left. Let me get readjusted here. I've never heard of it before either. Oh, give me 1 second. Sorry, I had to readjust my chair. The Life and Adventure of Santa Claus? I don't think I have. to check that out. Alright, we're gonna have a quick little hydrate break. So make sure you also hydrate as well. In here, sleep eats don't dehydrate, we hydrate. So make sure to also drink whatever you may have, whether it be water, hot cocoa, anything. It's an older Christmas special. Ooh. I'll have to check it out. The soju can is hydrating. Please don't chug a bottle of soju, not yet. Although I do have my soju right here. Alright. The next story isn't... it doesn't have a happy ending. But it's still a good Christmas story. I think it's actually one of my favorite Hans Christian Andersen story, not gonna lie. Well, one of them. Is it the fireplace or is it Rina's bones? Let's find out. Bone intermission. Bone intermission. Story of the perch down. No. No story of the perch down. No. I think because we have 2 stories left, would you guys like to hear a little crunch? Because I did bring some freeze-dried candy here, so this is, I know I had the peach rings last time, or I tried with peach ring this time. These are green, so I'm assuming apple. Maybe apple, maybe grape, lime. You got the bone crunch, and now you're gonna get a candy crunch. These are not the Rina candies, don't worry, these are not the Rina candies. Alright. Oh, these aren't really crunchy, they're kind of chewy. These are kind of stale, not gonna lie. Oh, that was not pleasant at all. I've been lied to. These are not crunchy, these are stale? Well, stale crunch candy, but not like that. It was a really weird texture. I was not a fan of those. Alright, so I don't know how bad. One bag was so crunchy and that one was not. Because it hasn't been open till just now, so that's weird. Let me hydrate again after that one. It only gave one little crunch, but it was not a pleasant crunch. It's freeze-dried gummies, but I had the peach ones not that long ago during last ASMR stream, I believe, and it wasn't bad. Sadly, I can't, since they're perishables, and I'm not worried about it. It didn't cost that much. I still have, like, the other bag. And I think I have a bag of marshmallows, too. That could have happened. There might have been a tiny hole. Because those definitely were stale compared to, like, the other ones. Alright, let me put on some chapstick. Get ready for some pops. Alright, and some lip oil next. Alright. And now the next story we'll be reading is the Hans Christian Andersen story, The Little Match Girl. I will not be reading the non-English title of this because I don't think I can pronounce that, but I will be reading the English one, which again, this is one of my favorite stories. As sad as it is, it's still one of my favorite stories. I remember Disney made a really good short animated feature on it. Highly recommend checking it out. It might be on YouTube. Alright, The Little Match Girl. It was so terribly cold. Snow was falling, and it was almost dark. Evening came on, and the last evening of the year. The cold and gloom of a poor little girl, bareheaded and barefoot, was walking through the streets. Of course, when she had left her house, she had slippers on. But what good had they have been? They were very big slippers, way too big for her. They had belonged to her mother. The little girl had lost them running across the road, where two carriages had rattled by terribly fast. One slipper she had not been able to find again, and a boy had run off with the other, saying he could use it very well as a cradle someday when he had children of his own. So the little girl walked on, with her bare feet, which were quite red and blue with the cold. In an old apron she carried several packages of matches, and she held the box of them in her hand. No one had bought any from her all day long, and no one had given her a cent. Shivering with cold and hunger, she crept along, a picture of misery, poor little girl. The snowflakes fell on her long fair hair, which hung in pretty curls over her neck, and all the windows' lights were shining, and there was a wonderful smell of roast goose, for it was New Year's Eve. Yes, she thought of that. In a corner formed by two houses, one of which projected farther into the street than the other, she sat down and drew up her feet under her. She was getting colder and colder, but did not dare to go home, for she had sold no matches, nor earned a single cent, and her father would surely beat her. Besides, it was cold at home, for they had nothing over them but a roof, which the wind whistled even through the big cracks that had been stuffed with straw and rags. Her hands were almost dead with cold. Oh, how much one little match might warm her. If she could take one from the box and rub it against the wall with her warm hands. She drew it out. Oh, sorry, I was trying to... How it sputtered and burned. It made a warm, bright It made a warm, bright flame, like a little candle, as she held her hands over it. But it gave a strange light. It really seemed to the little girl as if she had been sitting before a great iron stove with shining breasts, knobs, and a brass cover. How wonderfully the fire burned! How comfortable it was! The youngster stretched out her feet to warm them too, but the little flame went out. The stove vanished, and she only had the remains of the burnt match in her hand. She struck another match against the wall. It burned brightly, and then the light fell upon the wall. It became transparent like a thin veil, and she could see through the room. On the table of a snow-white cloth had spread, and on it stood a shining dinner service of roast goose steamed gloriously, stuffed with apples and prunes. And what was still better, the goose jumped down from the dish and waddled along the floor with a knife and fork in its breast, right over to the little girl. Then the match went out, and she could only see the thick, cold wall. She lit another match. Then she was sitting under the most beautiful Christmas tree. It was much larger and more beautiful than the one she had seen last Christmas through the glass door at a rich merchant's home. Thousands of candles burned on the green branches, and colored pictures like those in the print shops looked down at her. The little girl reached her hands toward them, but the match went out. The Christmas lights mounted higher. She saw them now as bright stars in the sky. One of them fell down, forming a long line of fire. Now someone is dying, thought the little girl, for her old grandmother, the only person who had loved her, who was now dead, had told her that when a star fell down, a soul went up to God. She rubbed another match against the wall. It became bright again, and in the glow, the old grandmother stood, clear and shining, kind and lovely. "Grandmother," cried the child, "oh, take me with you. I know you will disappear when the match is burnt out. You will vanish like the warm stove, the wonderful roast goose, and the beautiful big Christmas tree." And she quickly struck a whole bunch of matches. For she wished to keep her grandmother with her, and the matches burned with such a glow that it became brighter than daylight. Grandmother had never been so grand and beautiful. She took the little girl into her arms, and both of them flew in brightness and joy above the earth, very, very high, and up there was neither cold, nor hunger, nor fear. They were with God. But in the corner, leaning against the wall, sat the little girl with red cheeks and a smiling mouth, frozen to death on the last evening of the old year. the New Year's sun rose upon the pathetic figure. The child sat there stiff and cold, holding the matches, of which one bundle was almost burned. She wanted to warm herself, the people said. No one imagined what beautiful things she had seen, and how happily she had gone with her grandmother into the bright new year. The end. We said depression time. Said winter story. But I don't know, I love that story. I don't know why, I just love it. It's so depressing. But, like, they could have helped the little girl, but no one really helped. But she's with her grandma now. I very much advise, if you ever see or ever find the short, it is done by Disney. It is so beautiful. It will make you cry so many tears. But we do have one final story before I start to get ready for karaoke. And that is, we are going to be reading some Brothers Grimm. Which, we know which way these can go, but I think we might be safe with these. We are reading... Give me 1 second, that is not the right title they have on here. The Elves and the Shoemaker. Oh yes, I just read the Little Match Girl. We are now onto The Elves and the Shoemaker by Brothers Grimm, which this story can go many ways, but I think we're safe. I think we're safe with this one. Yeah, she's in a better place now. The first tale. A shoemaker, through no fault of his own, had become so poor that he only had one leather enough for a single pair of shoes. He cut them out one evening, then went to bed, intending to finish them the next morning. Having a clear conscience, he went to bed peacefully, commended himself to God, and fell asleep. The next morning, after saying his prayers, he was about to return to his work when he found the shoes on his workbench, completely finished. Amazed, he did not know what to say. He picked up the shoes in order to examine them more closely. They were so well made, and not a single stitch was out of place, just as if they were intended as a masterpiece. A customer soon came by, and he liked the shoes so much that he paid more than the usual price for them. The shoemaker now had enough money to buy leather for 2 pairs of shoes. That evening he cut the leather, intending to continue his work in the next morning with good cheer. But he did not need to do so, because when he got up, they were already finished. Customers soon bought them, paying him enough now that he could now buy leather for 4 pairs of shoes. Early next morning he found all 4 pairs finished, and so it continued. Whenever he cut out, the evening was always finished the following morning. He now had a respectable income, with time became a wealthy man. One evening, shortly before Christmas, just before going to bed, he had already cut out a number of shoes. He said to his wife, "Why don't we stay up tonight and see who's giving us this helping hand?" His wife agreed to this and lit a candle. They hid themselves behind some clothes that were hanging in the corner of a room. At midnight, 2 little men appeared. Sitting down at the workbench, they picked up the cutout pieces and worked so unbelievably quickly and nimbly that the amazed shoemaker could not take his eyes off of them. They did not stop until they finished everything. They placed the complete shoes on the workbench, then quickly ran away. The next morning the wife said, "The little men had made us wealthy. We must show our thanks. They're running around with nothing on, freezing. Do you know what? I want to sew some jackets and shirts and trousers for them and knit a pair of stockings for each of them. And you should make a pair of shoes for each of them." The husband said, "I agree." When everything was finished, they set the presents out instead of the unfinished work. Then they hid themselves in order to see what the little men would do. At midnight they came, skipping up, intending to start work immediately. When they saw the little clothes instead of the cutout leather, they seemed puzzled at first, but then delighted. They quickly put them on, then stroking the beautiful clothes on their bodies, they sang, "Are we not boys neat and fine? No longer cobblers shall we be." They then hopped and danced about, jumping over chairs and benches. Finally, they danced out of the house. They never returned, but the shoemaker prospered, succeeding in everything that he did. The end. Oh, I believe there are 2 more tales attached to this too. So, let's go ahead and read these final 2 tales, and we will wrap up stream. The second tale. Once upon a time, there was a poor servant girl who was diligent and neat. Every day she swept out the house and shook the sweepings onto a large pile outside the door. One morning, just as she was beginning her work, she found a letter on the pile of sweepings. She could not read, so she stood her broom in the corner and took the letter to her employers. It was an invitation from the Elves, asking the girl to serve as godmother at the baptism of one of their children. At first, the girl did not know what she should do, but finally they convinced her to accept. It would not be right, they said, to decline such an invitation. 3 elves came and led her to a hollow mountain where they all lived. Everything was so small but ornate and splendid than they could be described. The new mother was laying in a bed of ebony decorated with pearl buttons. The covers were embroidered with gold. The cradle was made of ivory and the bathtub of gold. The girl stood in as godmother and then wanted to go back home, but the elves asked her to stay with them for 3 days. She agreed to do so, and as time passed pleasantly and joyfully, the elves did everything to make her happy. Finally, she wanted to return home. They filled her pockets with gold and led her outside the mountain. She arrived home wanting to begin work. She picked up her broom that was standing still in the corner and started to sweep. Then some strangers came out of the house and asked her who she was and what she was doing there. It was not 3 days, she thought. She had spent in the mountain with the elves, but rather 7 years. In the meantime, her former employers had died. The end. Oh, there it is. On to the final tale. A mother had her child taken from the cradle by elves. In its place laid a changeling with a thick head and staring eyes, who would do nothing but eat and drink. In distress, she went to a neighbor and asked for advice. The neighbor told her to carry the changeling into the kitchen. Sit it on the hearth, make a fire, and boil water in 2 eggshells. That should make the changeling laugh, and if he laughs, it will be all over with him. The woman did everything just as her neighbor said. When she placed the eggshells filled with water over the fire, the changeling said, "Now I am as old as the wester wood, but have never seen anyone cooking in shells." And he began laughing about it. When he laughed, a band of little elves suddenly appeared. They brought the rightful child, set it in the hearth, and took the changeling away. The end. Yeah, we always have to have, and someone died in one of these fairy tales. But luckily the third one had a good ending. Alright. What I am going to do I will need some time to prepare and fix everything back up. So I also need to do vocal warm-ups. I'm trying to think of like what a good time. Maybe we'll try for 11:15. If I'm a little late, I'm still setting up, but yes. Let me go ahead and open the stream for the festive karaoke. Yes, thank you for all who attended. We will head in there, and I will try to be set up by 11:15. I might be a little bit late, but I will see you there. And if you fell asleep during the ASMR, continue to have sweet dreams and sleep tight. I will see you all soon.